Good morning. I want to introduce my new communications specialist, Natasha Nelson. She can tell yourself a little bit about herself.
Morning, everyone. Thanks for having me. Day 3, first day on the camera, so forgive me if I'm not on everyone's voices. My background is more the business-to-business marketing. I worked for a number of agencies in Edmonton. I also did a stint in the city of Edmonton in marketing and communications. So, yeah, happy to still in municipal government. Great to know everybody here.
Good to see you on board here. We'll go run around the table here so you can, I guess, introduce the council of the day. I mean, we'll see what happens in a few weeks, but Councillor Dean.
Alan Dean, I represent Whiteford Central.
Jeremy Wilhelm, Whitecourt East for now.
Peter Kilkin, Division 6, Goose Lake, Freeman River.
Dave Cush, I'm the Reeve and the councillor for Anselmo.
I'm John Burrows, I'm Whitecourt West.
Thanks for having me.
Welcome.
All right, with that, anything else from administration before we move here? Okay, so adoption of the agenda, any new items from administration? No, any items from council to add? Not seeing even I can get a motion to move the agenda as presented. Councillor Wilhelm,
I'll motion to adopt the agenda as presented.
thank you, councillor. Call the question, all in favor? Small moved. 4.1, adoption of the minutes, council meeting September 10th, 2025. Is there anything there anybody needs to talk about? Anything anybody sees? Not, if I can get a motion. Councillor Wilhelm,
I'll motion to adopt the council meeting minutes from September 10th, 2025 as presented.
thank you, councillor. Again, I'll call the question, all in favor? And that moves us 6.1, Lac St. Anne County Enforcement Services Delegation. Morning, gentlemen.
Good morning, Mr. Chair and Council. Thanks for having us out here today to do our mid-year report. I'd like to also introduce Sergeant Gingrich. I'm sure you guys all know him. He's local here in Whitecourt. He's the main officer out in Woodlands County for us because he resides in Woodlands County. So he directs a lot of our staff to deal with certain issues down here as well as he's dealing with them himself. So a lot of questions will be portrayed. I'll refer to Sergeant Gingrich for answering if I can answer.
Okay.
All right. So you have all been presented a package. I don't know if you have it in front of you, so it just gives you a bit of stats on our reporting. The first page is citations for Woodlands County. From January till now, basically, we've had 83 citations issued between January and August. So there were 2 warnings issued at that time as well. Ticket revenue for you guys, if you want me to discuss that with you, I guess again, is $17,345, of which half goes to the province. Fine amounts not issued. We did do 17 warnings. It equals a value of $3,327. If you look at the pie chart, you can see what the citations entail. The TSA exceeding speed limit is the biggest one here in Woodlands County. It is 48.19% of the tickets issued. And then it just goes through of what other citations were issued at that time. Any questions on that at that time?
The speeding, whatever, is that just kind of spread across the whole municipality, or is that just, or do you see more zones than others?
We've been getting a lot of complaints from councillors as well as residents of where, and senior leadership of where we need to set up operations or where the majority of the speeding is going. A lot of it's complaint based. A lot of our operations that we conducted were in Blue Ridge with the haul trucks as well as the general public traveling through there. West Mountain Road, speeds have gone extremely high, passing school buses. I think Officer or Sergeant Gendrick here has stopped a vehicle doing
54 over the posted speed limit. Yeah, it was
Just a little over.
Yeah, there's been quite a few that it's getting close to that summons. So in that situation, they're issued a mandatory summons for court. They must go before justice and speak to their matter, and if they don't attend, then there'll be a warrant issued, and they're advised of that. And I don't see too much more because some of them are still before the court. So.
Thank you. Councillor Dean.
I don't mean to jump ahead here, but you've got a map here, GIS mapping of the citations. What is the purple and the green and the yellow?
So that is distinguished between warnings and citations. So you got two maps there actually, page 5 and page 2. Just the way our system pulls them up and they're color coordinated. You can see where the citations have been, and then we try to change it. It's very tough because to break up that map to what you guys want to see is very difficult, because if we put it all on one page, it's going to be tons of color. So what has happened here is we've also, you can see the warnings and the citations itself. Some of our bylaw calls, some are TSA related. So we tried to break them up, and one lap overlaps the other one, and I think that's where we're getting confused. So the red is actually purple on the other page.
Oh, okay.
I think it also correlates to what section of the Traffic Safety Act it was issued under, so I believe the dark colors is gonna be for the speed.
Makes sense.
Any other questions, sir, on that end? So on page, I guess it's 19 of whatever you see there, the incident report. Gives you a sort of a breakdown. We had 73 incidences reported to the enforcement department in Woodlands County in that time period. You can see the breakdown of off-highway vehicles. There's 1 animal control, which is dogs and so forth, which was 6. We are still struggling with that one and creating a bylaw for Woodlands County to be approved or go in front of senior leadership and brought forward. We're having a lot of issues with livestock, especially in the Fort Assiniboine area, and we really have no teeth to I guess bite and issue citations and so forth and deal with the matters. So we are trying to sift through those the best possible we can, trying to pull different legislation where we can and talk to the people and educate the people. So we found a loophole in there in a sense of what we're missing for Woodlands County, and we're trying to rectify that problem as we speak. Unsightly properties, we have 4. We've been working with planning development with several different properties in the area. Seems like Blue Ridge, we've cleaned up 1 property there. Is now up for sale. I don't know if it has sold. It has sold. We have a continuous property in Blue Ridge too that is gets unsightly, gets clean, unsightly, and clean. So we're acting on the same order on that end, and he's been complying with those orders. We do have a few other orders being issued in Blue Ridge as we speak. One is on the main street. There's a mobile home with wheelchair access that the grass has not been cut, nor anybody living in there. So it's posing a fire hazard as well as the unsightly matter for when people drive through town. We've assisted 3 fire calls with Whitecourt Fire and Woodlands Fire. Sergeant Jendrick responded to a call here about a month ago. On Highway 32 was not a very good scene. You guys probably all heard about that. A gentleman had taken his life on the highway. We did traffic control as well as assisted in the picking up of certain parts and so forth of the deceased. Sergeant Jendrick did suffer a bit of trauma from that incident, but just to make you guys all aware, we did respond with Whitecourt Fire and Woodlands Fire on those calls. So when those come into our dispatch, we immediately respond to those calls. 9 community standards bylaws we dealt with, and again, you can see the citations and so forth there. Any questions on that?
Councilor Dean?
I want to come back to that map.
Yep.
Do you have jurisdiction on Highway 43? There's a bunch of
So-
green.
We have the authority now from the province to do single ditch highways. Our focus for our team is not to focus on Highway 43, but a lot of times people will blow a stop sign coming off the side road and the stop is initiated at that point because the offense did happen in Woodlands County. But
Gotcha.
yes, we are granted the authority now on single ditch highways.
Okay.
And double.
Thank you.
So the next few pages, you can see just the breakdown. What I don't like to see on this is the Woodlands County, Mayor Thorpe, Woodlands County, Lac-Sainte-Anne County, so that will be changed for the next time. For subzones, we've done some updating to our system to try to focus on our problem areas like Goose Lake. We've been having tons of complaints about quads and incidents in Goose Lake. So we're gonna make those different subzones, that way you guys could have a better understanding where we were, how we were, did we get there, vice versa, in a breakdown in our report. That way your subzones are better placed in our reporting. Our busiest time of the day is Tuesday for you guys. I don't know why, Lac-Saint County, it's Monday, but around 3 p.m. is when we're getting the majority of our calls through for Woodlands County. Any questions on that? The next page, which is page 7, you're gonna see the incident types that have been concluded and still under investigation or unfounded. So it just gives you a rough idea on our reporting of 43.1% have been concluded. Still under investigation is 12.1, and I'll give you a little example on that. It could be a unsightly order that's been issued. We've given them time or granted them time, the file just hasn't closed in our system. So we're paying attention or keeping that one open until we get the final go ahead to shut it down, or with them being compliant or not. You can see the range of concluded by charge, and this is referred to majority of bylaws for you guys, this chart here, not TSA related or provincial statutes. Any questions on that?
Councillor Cookman?
Yeah, I'm just curious, I know we have an issue on Range Road, I believe it's Range Road 64, that you've attended, and there's a property there that I guess breaches a lot of the different ones, and I don't know exactly, and I think that a lot of the community around there doesn't know exactly who the contacts would be when it includes social services, probably environment as well. And is there a way that we can create some clarity there so that you know, that some of those issues don't happen again and again and again?
So, yeah, and I'll pass it over to you right away. We're quite familiar with that property, and we've been working with the development team on that problem as well. There are several issues on that property. A lot of the neighbors have reached out to me personally, has called my office and I've chatted with them, and tried to rectify a lot of problems. One resident actually put their house up for sale. You're quite probably aware of that. And we've explained what we're doing with them and how we're gonna rectify the problem for them so they don't have to move if they don't choose to move. Unfortunately, there was some errors made on the order issued to them from a senior administrator, not our end, that didn't have enough bite in court to do what we need to do, so that order is being reissued from your office. So we could have the teeth to bite and move forward with this. There's a long history with law enforcement with these people. The RCMP are well aware of these people. They did reside in Lac-Saint County before they moved out here. So we were well aware of who we were dealing with before we entered the property, or what we were dealing with at that point. And then I'll leave it to Sergeant Jendrick here, because it is actually one of his files that started and was passed off to another officer, so.
Yeah, so the up in Fort St. Wendell has been entirely my file. There's an active enforcement order on. The one he's speaking of is closer
Yes.
out by East Mountain Road. But the one up in Fort Assiniboine, there's an active order, it's expired. Working with the property occupant, we're gonna be looking at getting contractors on to do the cleanup for the unsightly. There's nothing in the bylaw that we're, in regards to the livestock, that would help them getting out. But hoping to be able to get them to secure their property. We've dealt with the dogs, issued charges there. Been a recurring problem. I know the close neighbor has reached out before. He was trying to work with her, and now it's not going that way. So yeah, we'll proceed that way, and we can always reach out to Woodlands and provide information on what provincial statutes we have authority for, and then also provide who they can contact for those other agencies, Alberta Health or whatever the case may be. So.
Councillor Cookman?
Okay, then there's just a second question. If there's a landlord that is involved in that, what is the responsibility of the landlord?
So the order is issued to the landlord. We work with the property occupant because we have to provide them notice of entry for the land. Every contact I've tried to make with the landlord, there's been no response. But the property occupant has been doing a little bit and then stopping. So generally when we get compliance, we don't push too hard, but now that we're flagging non-compliance, we're gonna be proceeding with a cleanup, and that might alleviate some issues, but again, that might only be temporary, so.
The issue we run into there is one with a landlord and someone that's renting from them. In regards to Alberta Health, we have access to the property by our orders and so forth. The problem with Alberta Health is they won't attend unless there's a complaint from the rentee, right? So you're trying to work and trying to get Alberta Health in there as well, but the problem is that they can't access because there has not been a complaint from the tenant itself. And so they can't go under without us. But what we do is we work collaboratively with other agencies like Alberta Health, like the RCMP, and they act on our orders. So they're there just, the RCMP are there for our safety, but we're actually getting them on the property to see what's going on. And then if they find anything, then they're actual take action and do a warrant or vice versa to get on the property. No different than Alberta Health. We could bring them to us to assist us to see if there's any violations, but that gets them a start inside, but they really won't take action on something like that unless there's a complaint from the tenant.
I just have one.
Yeah, Councilor Bros.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. I guess this is a more general question. The role of the Alberta Sheriffs has been expanded a little bit and it kind of continues to morph. Is there a relationship between you guys and the, I know you work very closely with the RCMP, but since things are expanding with the sheriffs, I know I keep talking about trying to get a bit of a relationship with them even at the council level, and we haven't seen them yet. So I'm just wondering, is there anything we can help you with there, or would...
So we do work closely with the sheriffs, as you're aware of APP, right? That's gonna be part of our sheriff program and why it's expanded. We work closely with the sheriffs at the, they're a good partner to have, and we do work closely with them. The sheriffs are more focused right now on I guess traffic safety. At this point, they're not really involved in the municipal end of things. We do build relationships with them, we do operations with them. Are we working as closely as we can with them as the RCMP? No. And the reason for that is they just don't have the authority right now as the RCMP. That should be coming the beginning of next year or in December, that they're gonna have the authority to do a lot more under the Police Act. From what I understand is they were just waiting for their chief to be sworn in. I don't know if that's happened at this present time to grant them the, I guess, be written in the policy that they're police officers from in the Police Act.
Any other questions from council with remove? Please continue.
Excellent. So the next page on page 10 is just a proactive enforcement. This gives you the outline, even in our county, of where we've been focusing and so forth, and the goods and the bads of what's happening. But the one I want to bring to your attention is Officer Jendrick here on duty as a peace officer made a roadside stop, observed a off-highway vehicle traveling at an excessive rate of speed. After failing to produce appropriate documentation from the off-highway vehicle, observing an open alcohol container, and attempted to leave. And it just gives you an idea how we work with the RCMP. Officer Jendrick or Sergeant Jendrick dispatched our radio dispatch and had RCMP attend. And it led to the off-highway vehicle being seized, as well as charges for the occupants of the vehicle as well. So to answer your question, Mr. Burrows, we work that close with the RCMP. They do take us serious out there, and they are our backup right now out there. The sheriffs, like I said, are not around as much. We could call a dispatch, they call the RCMP, they're dispatched to our need if we need to. But that's just the one thing that happened here in Woodlands County. The other one was, of course, Whitecourt Fire with the single vehicle, motor vehicle collision. And we provided traffic safety at that point as well. So it just gives you an outline on the proactiveness that we are out there and that we are making our stops and we are trying to make our community a better place to live and travel.
Yeah, that subject with that traffic stop was allegedly impaired. RCMP arrived, they blew a fail right away. Once I made contact, someone else showed up, they tried to leave. They were stopped again in the second vehicle, were arrested for obstruction. They weren't charged criminally for that, but they did receive a multitude of charges and other things, and he's all been convicted on those charges. And that was off Highway 658, bordering into Lac-Saint County. So that was a long night.
And at that point, like I said, that concludes it. If you have any questions on the reporting or any other questions, by all means, we're here to answer them. Any concerns, we are here to jot them down. any more directive from council or senior leadership, we're here to also take notes.
A question I have, and I guess this is more in regards to the contract and the hours and stuff that you guys are putting in within the county. Do you feel that, you know, it's still so, that we're getting enough coverage? You know, I guess what we're having, do you feel that it's working well, or do we need to be looking at possible
I guess-
changes?
To answer that question is that, yes, you guys are limited amount of time being in the county itself for speed enforcement and being, you know, passing school buses and so forth. Can we have more hours in the county? Yes, we possibly could. It just provides more presence throughout the county. Again, it's a large county. I mean, going from Fort Assiniboine, you know, from the Klondike Ferry to the other end of Whitecourt, it's quite the distance, right? So a lot of time is commuting, but we are making the presence. We are trying to focus more with the problem areas like Goose Lake. That seems to be one of the problem areas. We've attempted to do several operations in Goose Lake, but it's been unsuccessful. We've reached out to the complainant to see if there's times of days, it's weekends. We need them to start utilizing the complaint line, because if it is a priority one call, in a sense, that we do send an officer immediately. It's not, okay, we'll put it on the back burner, when we get there kind of thing. But having more hours in Woodlands County would definitely benefit you guys in the sense of revenue and having our presence more in the county, as well as working closer with your development department and dealing with a lot of these unsightly properties or problem properties.
Thank you. Any other questions, comments? Councillor Wilhelm?
Just a comment, I wanted to thank both of you, but specifically Officer Jendrick. He's helped me with multiple things within my division, always quick. Typically not much follow-up required afterwards, so thank you for the work that you've done while I've been on council.
I think the important part here and what we're struggling with is a lot of our complainants, especially with that app that you guys have, want, I guess, some feedback on what has taken place or what has happened throughout the investigation of our officers. And it's very difficult because a lot of times we can't give you guys updates. And you know, I got Sheldon emailing the two of us because Matthew's asking where we could give them the updates, but we really can't give the general public updates in a sense, because it could be charges involved, it could be, you know, something that is going on tomorrow, a 72-hour notice is being issued to enter the property. We really can't share that information, so we're struggling on that end, not only with Woodlands County, but with Lac St. Anne County as well, and all the other contracted services we do provide. I just want to bring that to your guys' attention. So a lot of times that you're asking these questions, I think direct them to Sheldon, and then Sheldon can reach out and he could give you a response, but we really don't want to respond back on that app.
Fair enough. Anything else from council? Not seeing any. If I get a motion then to accept the presentation for information. Councilor Burrows?
I'll make motion to accept the presentation as information.
Thank you, councillor. Discussion on the motion? Yes, sir?
I do have a question.
Yes.
Is there anything that you guys would like to see done better, or anything that we could do better for you guys in your divisions?
I haven't heard much, anything over the last year here, so.
Good. That's good to hear. Thank you very much, gentlemen.
Thanks.
Motion on the floor. Call the question. All in favor? And that's carried. Thank you guys again for everything that you do.
Thank you.
Look forward to your next presentation. Okay, 7.1 bylaws, 632/25 council committee bylaw.
Thank you, good Kush. So this item was brought forward to GMP. Originally, there was a request from the Economic Development Committee to alter the makeup of the current board. It was discussed at GMP, and the motion from Councilor Prestige was to actually reduce the overall size of the board. Part of that discussion there was twofold. We have ran into some historical quorum issues with that larger board. There are some costs associated with these committee members, also associated with going to conferences and that sort of thing. And so administratively, it was recommended at that committee that we reduce the size counter to the recommendation of the committee. Subsequent to that, I believe you all received an email from the current chair and vice chair Just meeting procedure wise, I couldn't get it on the agenda, but there is a paper copy there for you to have. And I figure it is appropriate to discuss. Ultimately, I appreciate the work the chair and the vice chair are doing and their commitment, and I appreciate that and their passion, because clearly they are. I don't necessarily share the same interpretation. I do have a overall concern administratively that is something that I've witnessed with a lot of our committees, and I am trying to change that, is there tends to be a bit of scope creep with some of our committees. There is, from what I've seen, a desire to do the work as the committee or direct administration to do work, and ultimately we have these committees as advisory in nature. The goal is to provide support or suggestions to administration and council as well. But some of these committees, not just the economic development one, we've seen where they're actively directing our staff to do things. And then they're upset when the reports aren't necessarily provided in time and trying to hold their staff accountable. And I appreciate the passion and I appreciate the engagement, but there is some scope creep there where legislatively, there is no authority for them to direct that to staff, and if they feel that is necessary, then to bring it back to council if they do not like my response. And the other thing I did mention at the GMP is I do think there's an important balance between our committees and administration. There will be times where administratively I recommend something different than what the committee recommends. So I have no hard feelings either way. Regardless of what you'd like to do with that committee, we'll make it happen. I have some concerns with the size and scope that it's currently at with the ECDEV. You look at comparables, the proposed number is more in line with what some comparable municipalities do. It's more in line with Lac Ste. Anne, it's more in line with Brazeau County, a smaller number. Ultimately, the proposal of 3 and 2, I have no personal preference if it's 1 councillor and 4 public members or any combination there. I do think the size of the 7 is a bit large. And supplemental to that discussion, Councillor Dean did express some interest in potentially reviving our Indigenous Pathways Committee. We did have a committee for, I believe it was a year, but our current committee bylaw says that unless it's adopted formally by bylaw after a year, that committee ceases to exist. So we have had some Indigenous friendship associations reach out and ask for some follow-up meetings, and we're informing them, well, the committee doesn't exist. So hearing that, and hopefully from the discussion, I think the recommendation that I have now is slightly different. I would probably recommend to council that we defer to make any amendments that you so choose related to the ECDEV committee, but also to incorporate the Indigenous committee if you feel that there's still merit there. And it's still something we could definitely have in place before the org meeting of the new council. We think they're minor amendments, however, which way they go. But recognizing that there now are 2 distinct issues, depending on the discussion, I think my recommendation would no longer be to give it 3 readings today.
Hey, I'd like to start just on the pathways one. We met here the other day. Didn't realize obviously that the board had been, or the committee had been, I guess, not valid at that point, but it does, like you said, we do have the Indigenous Friend Society that reaches out and they try to, I guess that's kind of the avenue that they try reaching through some of our like Truth and Reconciliation Day and that kind of thing, or if there's any other things like this tree program that Councillor Dean was talking about where they try to bring Indigenous, I guess, touch or culture to whether it's a plot of land or, you know, we're looking at possibly like the Husis demonstration force, so that could offer an educational piece for a lot of individuals in the area, especially school groups and stuff when they're coming through there. So I would see value in actually making that a formal group to continue with. But that again is my piece. Councillor Dean, then over to Councillor Cullen.
Yeah, I think you touched on it, Dave. There's again, from a procedural point of view, I appreciate you bringing this to council's attention. Wasn't aware of it. And that's pretty consistent with a lot of the information that you've been bringing forward, Mr. CEO. It's greatly appreciated that we're going through our bylaws and making sure that they're compliant, etc. But with respect to the Pathways Committee, work has started. There is ongoing work, and I would definitely support the revival of that.
Councillor Wilhelm, Councillor Coogan.
Okay, so through the chair with regards to council and administration with regards to the economic development changes. I understand the criticism there. There has been some issues over the last couple of years with regards to quorum, and some of that issue has not had to do with members wanting to attend meetings. There's been some issues with meetings being put into calendars, people not knowing when meetings are happening, time changes happening on meetings that are driven by administration, or meetings being canceled by administration without approval of the chair. So some of the quorum stuff isn't just to do with people not wanting to participate, it's having to do with some informational stuff. So anyways, that's something that can be worked on. I just want to note, like, all the other committees of council that have members at large on them have at least 7 members on it. So it would be very strange for me to make this one an economic development committee, which I feel is a very important committee that has members at large on it, to be decreased in size, unless you're planning on decreasing the size of all the members at large committees that council sits on. Right? If it's a budgetary problem, then all the committees should be reduced. And if not, this one should stay the same. I can understand the criticism about potentially changing and increasing the number of members at large. So, and we're also doing this in the fourth quarter before council's changing. Several members at large are changing over. Just to add context to that, we've been pushing for some of these changes for a little while. It's very slow moving currently with how busy the EDO is. So some meetings were getting missed because of how busy he was, and again, because of quorum. So with that being said, I'm wondering if council would accept potentially amending this and still passing it, or at least for discussion in the future, just keeping what is the current composition of the Economic Development Committee at 3 councillors and 4 members at large. And then the new council after the election and the members at large involved in that committee can have a further discussion if they want to do a composition change. I respect that we brought this pretty late in the game and that maybe further discussions required on it.
Councillor Coogan.
Yeah, through the chair to council. I think that we're a bit unique as far as municipality is concerned, that we do have a dedicated person to that EDO position. And we now have an assistant to that person, so we're starting to see, at least on the regional perspective, I'm starting to see a lot more movement and alignment with the economic goals in our strategic plan. One of the things that I haven't heard from is that there hasn't really been a discussion from the EDO on how he sees this working. This has been a committee thing, and the character of our EDO is that he really likes to make sure that the voice of the public is heard. And so I'm just curious as to whether maybe our administrator Matthew and Bert could have that conversation and say, what do you see there, and come up with aligned or with something that the committee can actually work with. I just see that we're quite a bit different, and I really notice that on the regional level, and I wouldn't want to take away from the public engagement portion of it, because I think that's very important. But I also don't want to compromise how our economic development officer has to work. So that's, to me, a kind of a balance that has to happen.
Councillor Dean?
Thanks, Mr. Chair. So first of all, I wanna clarify Councillor Wilhelm's question about keeping the makeup of that committee, the ACTF committee status quo until the org meeting. I believe that was your recommendation, was to push this off until afterwards?
I think just for clarity, yes, through the chair. We can do one of two things. We can defeat this bylaw today and bring a new one back after the election. That's an option. There are some FOIP legislation changes that are also being amended as well. Hearing the debate so far, I think perhaps the compromise is give it first and second reading and direct administration to come back with the Indigenous Pathways Committee added and the changes to change the ECDEV back to its current status quo. We can have that to you at the meeting in the 1st of October. What that will do is it will enshrine the Indigenous Pathways Committee for the new council, recognizing that we do have 4 elections out of the 7. So that there's a possibility that there will be 4 new individuals there, and they may not have the historical knowledge, and that may get lost if you don't reincorporate it prior. So I would recommend that you give it first or second reading today, but also direct us to amend to incorporate the Indigenous Pathways and to amend the ECDEV back to the current status.
Okay, and then second question that I had relates to the function of an advisory committee versus a working committee. And I agree that the ECDEV committee is members at large are eager to assist with economic development in the county, and sometimes that advisory piece does get lost during discussion when you know, in the past there'd been attempts to have subcommittees that could then maybe work at the trade fair, etc. And you know, you did a good job of reeling us back in. I believe that those energies of those members at large can still be harnessed and utilized in that advisory capacity, because if there is a concept that comes through, the committee, it's my understanding, can make a recommendation to council that the committee does A, B, and C, and council will make a decision to go ahead. It's an extra piece in the puzzle, but with proper planning, I think that can be executed.
If I can, through the chair, just to further clarify that too, that is part of the reason why we're putting such a push on department business plans. So they will be provided to council in November. But those business plans will also be referred to all respective committees, because if anything, I think that's where we will benefit from having that advisory and hands-on nature to the committee. Those business plans for the departments that actually have a committee to bounce things off of should really be those committees' documents to a large point of view, with the guidance of our EDO and the rest of our team.
Sure.
But as it stands right now, we're building them internally just to get them further ahead for the next council. But that's where we're looking at that business plan mentality to force that engagement and to get that passion that we have from our committees.
Councillor Dean?
And so just to clarify procedurally, what you're recommending is that council gives, makes a motion to give first reading, a motion to give second reading, and then a motion to amend, to include the Indigenous Pathways and to revert the ECDEV committee back to 3 members from council and 4 members at large. Okay.
Anybody else? Councillor Wilhelm?
If nobody else has anything to say, I'll make that motion, I'll start and just make the first motion.
If you would, I just one clarity, just for Councillor for Administrator Matthew or Administration, I know if we're gonna bring this back in October again to take a look at this, I just, if we are going to end up changing the composition, I would recommend that we do it before the org meeting and not after the org meeting. So we don't have a bunch of members at large and you end up taking a look and saying, well, we have 4 people, but we need 3, or, yeah, just, it makes things a lot more clear. It's just, if we're gonna change things, I would recommend doing it before the org meeting, so it's not scaling back after we're picking people or waiting another year and, you know, and the composition. It's just my suggestion, Councillor Wilhelm.
Through the chair, I think we would have the third reading come back on October 8th, correct? Where we would then pass the bylaw with the correct number of members. I believe that would be the plan.
Okay, Councillor Wilhelm.
I'll make a motion that council gives first reading to bylaw 632/25 council committee bylaw.
Motion on the floor, discussion on that motion? Not seeing any, I'll call the question, all in favor? Second motion, Councillor Dean,
Move the council gives second reading bylaw 632/25 council committee bylaw.
thank you, Councillor. Discussion to that motion? Not seeing any, I'll call the question, all in favor? Third motion, Councillor Wilhelm.
I'll make a motion that council send the bylaw to administration for amending the Economic Development Committee back to the 3 members of council and 4 members at large, and to integrate the Indigenous Pathways Committee into the bylaw.
Discussion to that motion? Not seeing any, I'll call the question, all in favor? Alright, so that'll move us to 7.2, general holidays and office hours policy.
Thank you, Reeve. So as we've spoken to many times, just updating our policies or procedures, removing some of our administrative operational processes out of our policies. We have brought before you a request that we rescind policies 1957-1 and 1962-7. There's a fair amount of administrative operational things within those existing policies. We are recommending that you adopt the policy AD 2.006 in its place. To also be clear, this does codify the closure period that was discussed both at the previous GMP and the previous council, where by default now the office is simply closed December 25th through 1st. And covers that as a requirement as well. And it also updates some language in relation to Alberta employment standards. The big change that I think it's a 23-year in the making change is no one here administratively has been able to truly justify why we make the Fort office open at 8 in the morning and work till 4:30. And for some time, in speaking with the managers over there, they've been advocating for themselves to see what that clarification is. So if you were to adopt the policy in its current form before you, I do need to let you know that it does change the office hours at the Fort from 8 o'clock till 4:30 till 8:15 to 4:30, so it's a 15-minute difference. In speaking with the managers there, they've said anecdotally that will probably affect somewhere between 5 and 10 individuals every year. But that said, they're always in the office beforehand anyway, and they're happy to continue to work with those individuals. But they have said that it is minimal, and a lot of those people in the past are, I think the words were, they're getting older. And some of them are coming less now, perhaps not at all, unfortunately, just with the way of transition things. So that is a change, but it is something where we've had a discrepancy between our office staff, depending on the location they work at. Our mentality administratively is we want to treat everyone the same, but it is a thing to know.
Thank you. Any discussion from council on this one? Seeing any? Councillor Dean?
Move that council rescind policy 1957-01 regular hours of work and policy 1962-07 general holidays and vacation pay.
Thank you, councillor. Discussion to the motion? Not seeing any, I'll call the question, all in favor? That's moved. We have a second motion on the sheet here. Councillor Wilhelm?
I'll motion that council adopt policy AD 2.006 general holidays and office hours policy as presented.
Thank you. Discussion to the motion? And not seeing any, I'll call the question, all in favor? It's moved. Policy AD 2.007 employee recognition program.
Thank you, Reed. So this next item has been discussed multiple times, both at GMP and I also believe at council. We are requesting that our current policies 1903 and 1969-1 be rescinded. And that you support the internal policies and procedures that were discussed at GMP. For clarity, since the date that they were discussed at GMP, I have reduced the scope of recognition, looking at comparables. In some ways, I did think it was still slightly excessive. So we did make some changes there from the proposal that was discussed at that level. And we do think it is important that council adopts an employee recognition policy because you do set the operational service levels. So having you set this is what we recognize, I think is important, and leaving it up to administration to work within your budgets to do the operational aspect, I think is appropriate. Further to that, when we do a comparable, we are well below the recognition of what some of our neighbors do. We're significantly below Yellowhead, the MD of Greenview, as well as the town of Whitecourt. But with the new program, we do a better job recognizing our staff than, in my opinion, Lac Saint Anne County or Barrhead County do. So when you look at our direct comparables in terms of recognizing our staff, we're in the middle of the pack. I don't think it's excessive, but it is still less than some of our neighbors. So I think that's appropriate use of government resources where we're in the middle of the pack when it comes to recognition, but it's still not excessive.
Councillor Dean?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Just I guess a process question. Is this concept, were these discussions that you had with SMT?
Some of them were. SMT did provide comments on all of the policy.
Sure.
There were things where, I'll be honest, SMT doesn't necessarily fully agree with some of the changes. But there are, I would say, 95, well, I'm not gonna say a number. There was a single change that not all of SMT was in a consensus on. And that's okay. That's where my job comes in, where I make the call. But all the other changes requested from SMT have been incorporated. I think the big one too that was a good suggestion from some of SMT was we will be implementing a recognition program for the day-to-day where you can give your colleagues kudos, or if someone's out in the field and sees they're safe, and there's a collaboration there where you can get points and recognition that you can then redeem for county swag or other things at a minimal cost to the organization. Because I think we have some managers and some SMT members that do a great job of recognizing the day-to-day work, but we have some where it can be improved, so we're gonna incentivize that slightly. So I think that was the biggest change based on the feedback from SMT.
Thank you.
Councillor Coogan?
Yeah, I actually, when I looked through the program as it was presented, and we did have a robust discussion about it at GNP, you know, I could really find nothing in the recognition portion of it that was you know, in a negative way. But when I went back through my notes on the in-camera session, which I can't talk about in this, I became personally a bit uncomfortable in making a decision, you know, that I agree with this one. But then when I went back to my notes, the discussion around you know, the recognition of our senior management team, and how it is a little bit difficult internally, because that's outside of our, you know, that becomes an internal thing that you yourself do. So then I looked at you know, the decisions we make as far as our only employee is, and you know, then it became increasingly apparent to me that maybe you know, some of the discussion we had in that portion of our trying to figure this out is a little bit contradictory to the decision we would make, you know, with the only employee we have. And that's where I found the difficulty. And I know that that makes it incredibly difficult for me to make a decision, because I'm all about not driving a wedge between the team that does the policy here, which is our thing, and our administrator. And I'm also very aware that I don't wanna have our decision drive a wedge between our administrator and our employees. And I mean, I have some solutions after reflecting on this that may be acceptable or not acceptable. But today, right now, although I do agree with the format and the way that this has been set up, it puts me in conflict with the other end of it. So
Through Reeve, just for clarity, completely understand that. What I would recognize, and I have said it before, and I think there's been a consensus from council as well, is a lot of our policies have council in the weeds in operational things. I have no problem wearing that if there is a wedge. I'll be brutally honest in an open session. I think there are some wedges currently in our recognition, because how we recognize, and you're referring to the tiered section within the policies, we have been inconsistently applying it currently. At least with the mechanisms in the internal policies and procedures, it standardizes it, and that was where my push was. What I would suggest, if you do feel uncomfortable, and we don't want that, we would like a council that stands behind that decision. I would still recommend you approve this policy, but I would ask that you direct us to bring back those internal HR policies, which are my responsibility, for discussion at GMP. There's nothing wrong with that. Just because I'm implementing an HR policy as administration and operationally, that doesn't mean we can't take your feedback and adjust those to something that you'd like. And I would say that would be the appropriate venue to address your discomfort. Because by no means is our policy and procedure perfect. And the more feedback we have from everyone, I think the better result. So I wouldn't be opposed to that. I would suggest though that you do the house cleaning now of adopting the new policy and rescinding the other ones. All that does though is it will now say that you recognize terms of service, you will recognize retirement, but it's silent on values, which is fine. We've tried to budget accordingly based on those numbers so we can handle that, and that won't change our operations overall this year.
Anything else for Mr. Ferris? Not seeing any then. Councilor Bros?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll go ahead and make the motion that council rescinds policy 1903 and policy 1967-1 regarding employee recognition and further supports administration and managing employee recognition through an internal operational policy in a manner consistent that was presented to the governance and priorities meeting.
Thank you, Councilor. Discussion on the motion? Councilor Kuchen?
yeah, I think I'm clear on that. Yeah. We're good.
Any further discussion to the motion? Not seeing any, I'll call the question. All in favor? That's moved. Councilor Kuchen?
Yeah, I'll move the council accept policy AD 2.007 employee recognition as presented.
And just for clarification, Mr. Ferris, do we need to make, or I guess amend the motion to come back to GMP? Or just, are you gonna bring that back? Just as per the discussion.
Fair enough. Through the chair, as it stands right now, I do not have to bring it back. If the desire of council is to bring it back, you set direction by motion, so I would recommend it be a motion.
Mr. Coogan?
Yeah, I would say that would be a separate motion, and that I would entertain that.
Okay, so motion to adopt policy 82.007. Any discussion on that motion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor? Councilor Kuchen,
Yeah, I'll make a motion then that we direct administration to bring the internal, I guess you would call it the internal employee recognition and back to D&T for discussion.
thank you, Councilor, discussion on that motion? Okay, not seeing any, I'll call the question, all in favor? Okay, that's moved. 7.4, rescinding of policy 1972, health and wellness policy.
Thank you, Reeve. Similar vein, trying to standardize our health and wellness policies and programs. One of the tasks that council had assigned me this year was to review our health and wellness program for comparable municipalities. And also to see if we were in line with what competitor employers are doing. We did that review. We adopted the changes. We actually were able to increase our benefits with a reduced cost. So it worked out quite well for the organization. That said, there is still a policy that has been adopted that outlines the payments for health and wellness spending accounts. But quite honestly, we're of the opinion that this is an administrative HR policy. Council gives us the budget on what you're willing to spend for health and wellness. And as such, we work within that budget. How it's allocated and that sort of thing, in our opinion, is administrative in nature. The new policy, the new internal HR policy is very similar to this. But we are of the opinion it is operational in nature and that this one can be rescinded.
Councilor Dean?
Through the chair to administration, from a functional point of view, nothing changes for the employee. If they have a gym membership that they want to claim, that would be allowable and the process would be exactly the same.
Through the chair, yes and no. Part of the change that we are implementing administratively is we have assigned the review and the submission through our benefits provider. Historically, it had been done by our HR coordinator and director of finance. Not only does that put them in a difficult position when they see these requests, it also resulted in health and wellness spending accounts being attached to people's payroll. And then there was delays on those payments, that sort of thing. By going through our benefits provider, the payments will be made directly to the individual, in my opinion, faster. And it will not be associated with their payroll. So there'll be a clear difference between a taxable benefit and a health benefit, which there was definitely a gray area prior to these changes. So that will definitely be a change. But also legislatively, there's a change. We're supposed to require the employees to determine where they want the money to be assigned. And historically, we haven't done that. So from a process perspective, now that we have this new administrator, that will be another level of change where employees will have to pick where the allocation goes at the start of the year. But that's just to bring us legislatively compliant. It's not necessarily policy related.
I'm not quite clear on when you say they have to pick, what do you mean by that?
So looking at the example before, sorry, through the chair, where it says the $1,000 that the staff member has, they're supposed to allocate at the start of the year. Is it going to be a wellness benefit, which is a taxable benefit, or a health benefit? So for example, personally, I've always taken the health benefit. The downside of having glasses is they're expensive and they don't always get replaced. So I've always assigned that for myself, but proper process is you are supposed to assign it. There is a mechanism where we can put some of those added health benefits also under the wellness component. That way, if you don't know and you want to hedge your bets that you need to cover, I don't know, musical lessons, for example, but you don't know if your child will need glasses, you could assign it all to the wellness portion, but that would make that entire portion taxable, when in theory, some of it shouldn't be.
Got it. Thank you.
Any other discussion?
Just-
Councilor Rose?
Just one, so if you're moving from that to, or from the current to an internal, are you still going to have the ability to carry over that 1 year that we had in the past, or is that one and done?
If I may, through the chair, nothing about the structure of the entitlements has changed. So you will be allowed to do the carryover. The administration is more than what's changed. And then the key driver to putting this as administratively is council just sets the rate. If going forward in 2027, which is the next review date, if you think it's too high and needs to be reduced as council, then we will reduce it and we'll adjust it accordingly. But how it's operated is really operational and not the concern of council in our opinion.
Any other discussion on 7.4? Not seeing any. If anyone wants to make a motion. Councilor Dean?
My mouth's full of apple, but I'll try. I move that council rescind policy 1972 health and wellness program and direct administration to implement an administrative policy based on council's September 10th, 2025 motion setting the 2026 program rates.
Thank you, Councilor. Discussion to that motion? Not seeing any. I'll call the question. All in favor? It's moved. 7.5, request to rescind outdated planning policies.
Good morning, council. In front of you are several policies that have been in place for quite a few years. And since the inception of the current land use bylaw and our municipal development plan of 2024, we're looking to rescind a few of them. So I'll just go through them quickly. So policy 6103, development on lands with no road access, that is now currently covered in our land use bylaw under section 4.8. And specifically sections, references made specifically in sections 4.8.3.6 and 4.8.3.7. Policy 6104, issuance of enforcement or stop orders. Again, it's indicated within, of course, the Municipal Government Act under planning part 17, as well as in the land use bylaw. It makes reference to that, so we no longer require that policy. Policy 6107, private sewage disposal systems. That one is currently, again, let's see. Yeah, sorry. In the old land use bylaw, it provided specific districts. Now what we're going to do is put specific on each development permit that is issued, that request for those in the note. Policy 6108, the public hearing policy, of course, that's been incorporated into the Woodlands County procedural bylaw, 62525. Policy 6111, subdivision applications where conceptual plans and area structure plans. That was incorporated into our municipal development plan at the time of inception into specific sections of that bylaw. Policy 6113, Alberta Land Surveyors Real Property Report. This policy has been incorporated into the new land use bylaw, specifically section 4.9.1.2. Policy 6114, requirements for installation of utility services. This one as well has been implemented into the new land use bylaw under section 6.2.3.0, which covers the requirement of installation of utilities being a condition of a development agreement. So generally what occurs is when a subdivision is approved, we enter into a development agreement with the developer themselves. It outlines the various conditions that they're required to meet, as well as, of course, the utility portion of that. Policy 6115, authority to grant setback variance to legal non-conforming properties. That has been defined under section 4.8.2.0 of the new land use bylaw. Policy 6117, guidelines for land use amendments to natural resource extraction, Class 1 pit district. This was now addressed in the 2024 municipal development plan that was adopted by council. So we're just looking for a motion to rescind those particular policies. If the council has any questions, fire away.
Any discussion on the motion? Straightforward. Councillor Kuchen?
Okay, I'll make a motion to rescind Woodlands County Policy 6103, 6104, 6107, 6108, 6111, 6113, 6114, 6115, 6117.
Thank you, Councillor. Discussion on the motion? Seeing any, I'll call the question. All in favor? It's moved. Nothing in new business. I'll start councillor reports and inquiries. Councillor Dean?
So not a lot of activity since the last council meeting, but on Monday, this Monday, the 22nd, we had our ASB meeting and covered a lot of ground. There was a bit of catch up over the summer. And then yesterday, as referenced earlier in this meeting, there was a Pathways Committee meeting that wasn't really a Pathways Committee meeting, I guess. But we did meet and did discuss some initiatives, so I'll be happy when that committee is formally incorporated into our bylaw. And I just wanted to kind of be proactive, I guess. Myself and our CEO and Councillor Prestige will be attending the SMR conference tomorrow and Friday in Edmonton, and found that conference last year to be very worthwhile, and look forward to learning more about the process and hopefully seeing if there are any possible steps forward for us in that industry. And that's everything.
Thank you, Councillor. Any questions for Councillor Dean? Not seeing any. Councillor Wilhelm?
I had one meeting since our last council meeting. It was our community services meeting, where we approved rural community connection grants for 3 people in our area, and then also 2 YES applications. So YES applications are youth sports grants that we provide for children within the municipality that maybe not their families can't afford to have them in a sports program, so we provide additional funding for them to participate in that. So those are always awesome ones to hand out. And then we got our first Parks and Recreation Coordinator update at that committee, and it was really exciting to see the work that she put into her report and some ideas that she's running, her and administration are running through their heads on what we can do with some of our parks and recreation assets within the municipality. So I think the hiring of her into that position is gonna do some really positive work for our parks and recreation sites within the municipality. So look forward to see how that progresses in the future. That's all I have.
Hey, any questions for Councillor Wilhelm? Councillor Dean?
No questions, but I would be remiss if I didn't add that there were 2 other activities that are participated in on Sunday. So the Rotary Club of Whitecourt initiated a peace pole project that is in recognition of the desire for worldwide peace. So they had a ceremony where they unveiled the peace pole and had invited Woodlands County, so I was happy to represent the county there and say a few words. Just another example of that group's ongoing efforts in our community. And then later that afternoon, the Trailblazers Snowmobile Club had their AGM, and I attended that as well. And another example of volunteers in our community that just make our area better. So kudos to the Trailblazers and the Rotarians.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Kuchen?
Yeah, since last meeting, on the 11th, I attended the community services meeting here in Whitecourt, and our new recreational director gave an incredibly great visionary update on what's been happening as far as the recreation here and some of the opportunities and some of the things that they're looking at. She had told us that the Center of Alberta, our staff had been working on that to try to clean that up a little bit and get more traffic in there. So the next day, my wife and I took a walk up there, and yeah, there's stuff going on there. It's good. I'd like to say thank you very much, because it is a part of our community that we have decided is going to highlight part of what Woodlands County is. So it was a really good update, and I look forward to all of the ideas and things that are going to be coming up there. On the 19th, I attended at the Eagle River Casino the final chapter of the Social Impact Lab, which has been a part of the Growth Alberta Partnership to start to understand a little bit more what our role needs to be as regional economic development, which aligns with Woodlands County and our region. And we did have a really good session, and came out of it with a very positive way forward, knowing now that some of the municipalities and the communities that partnered in that would really like to join the organization and start developing some of the strategies that are in our mission statement. The next meeting I had was a service board meeting, and we had some really good discussion over some of the things that are going to be coming our way in the next little while, and some of the ways that we can handle and deal with them. Then on the 23rd, I met with the EMC2 committee, which is the Emissions Mitigation Conference Committee, which is about clearing the air. And it is a conference that we've proposed to have in Fox Creek at their multiplex there. And this is the first step for Growth Alberta Partnership to act on this idea of regional economic development, and how important it is to have industry, municipalities, Indigenous communities, community groups understand that we're all partners in the stewardship of both our social welfare and our environment and our economic future in this new reality that we're in. And we set a budget. We have an NRED grant for $33,000 that is dedicated to do that, and it is part of the goals that we've been working on for the last 4 years to reinvent what a regional group should look like and what they should be doing and how they're funded. We recognized, I think it was 2 years ago, when the provincial government decided that the Regional Economic Development Alliances weren't really effectively doing the things that the provincial government wanted us to do, and we were already ahead of the curve there, where we understood that government funding shouldn't be the only thing that drives these organizations, because they become basically stagnant, much like growth did. And quite frankly, I think that the pressure that was put on us, especially Councillor Burrows insisting that new technology like SMRs and those types of things should be part of the conversation and the education process, so that we're not doing these things with a knee-jerk reaction, but doing them with very critical thinking and moving forward with new technologies, educating first and ourselves, and then educating the public as to why and how we're doing this and how that social impact is going to be there. And so that was we had a great meeting. We had some industry leaders there to do this committee meeting, and I think if we can pull this one off, it'll be the first step in the right direction for regional economic development. we proposed this conference to be in, at the end of January, beginning of February. So we'll see how that works out. There's a lot of work to be done, but we're gonna give her a try. So that was my last 2 weeks.
One thing, just if I could ask, if we're taking a look at trying to, through the REITs to kind of determine a time frame or whatever for the conference, can we, or could, when you're on there, possibly take a look at the ASB convention, because that's around that same time frame? I know just that there's value for both, and there's a lot of people that, and our council also who sit on the one who would want to be on the other, so.
Good point. I will do that.
And I'm sure we're not the only municipality that
Yeah.
has councillors in both, so. Any questions, comments for Councillor Coogan? No, Councillor Bros?
Okay, thanks, Mr. Chair. So, as many of you know, my duties often overlap for Woodlands versus RMA at the provincial level, but excuse me, so I've been pretty busy with most of that in the last little while. It's been crazy. But I do want to touch on two things that I think are gonna severely or potentially affect our budget process and some of our infrastructure going forward. So the federal government is actually interested in working with municipalities and trying to see what they can do for economic development. They had a roundtable at the University of Athabasca. I was lucky enough to attend that. We had a good conversation with the federal Secretary of State. His name is Buckley Belanger, and he was a former mayor from Saskatchewan, MP. MP. And the two pieces that we're really focusing around is the Rural Infrastructure Deficit Report that RMA put out, which is a $17 billion bridge and road deficit that we don't, as rural Alberta, we don't have funding for. And I wanted to go back into the history of it a little bit better, because I'd heard, stories that, well, it used to be done this way, it used to be done that way, and nobody could really tell me, so I actually looked it all up. In 2013, the province, up to 2013, the province was actually paying for all the bridges. Woodlands County has 76 municipal bridges, and correct me if I'm wrong, 76 municipal bridges, 74 of which are actual road bridges. 2 of them are footbridges. So they wouldn't qualify for any of that. But, so that leaves us with 72 bridges, and the funding was cut off in 2013 by the abolition of that program. They created STIP in the meantime, and STIP has become a extremely oversubscribed program. So in the next, I think we approved this, I'm gonna get this wrong, it's 7.5 million over the next 10 years for Woodlands on the bridge end of things. 7.3, it's in around there. And I just wanted to highlight the amount of I guess stress on a budget that looking after that much bridge infrastructure. So part of what we're trying to have conversations with the federal government is these environmental studies, and you've got to do hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of studies to replace something that's been there for 100 years. It makes very little sense. There should be a pathway to streamline that, and they are actually open to the idea of streamlining some of that federal regulation. So my kind of pitch was, if we can make a $17 billion infrastructure deficit a $13 million infrastructure deficit because we've reduced all the red tape in the program, then everybody's saving money, because we're heading in the right direction. Also pushing the legislation isn't federally completed around the SMR technology yet. So we've been singing that song to make sure that Alberta does not have, we're not gonna have a developed hydroelectric. Wind and solar are not base power generation. We're going to need to burn something or heat steam to turn a turbine somehow. So it's either gonna be, and we're not going back to coal under any government anytime soon. So that's why these things are really important, that we can actually get back to solid footing under people's regulatory requirements under in a business sense, so that people are willing to invest in the province and hopefully Woodlands County as well. So that's the end of my update.
Councillor, any discussion for Councillor Burrows, Councillor Coogan?
Yeah, I guess one of the things that I've come up against with some of the things that we're doing is Bill C5, and you know how reluctant the industry is actually to step out and say anything because of that bill. I think that one of the things that I find really interesting was the announcement that the GOA actually, the leadership there is now starting to be a little bit more opportunistic in the way that they want to work with the federal government than that friction that was there before. And you know, that is in alignment with what you're saying happened with that conference. So yeah, I'm just wondering, have you heard any of that with Bill C5 as being part of that barrier?
Not specifically, they're not really oversharing anything at this point. We're trying to go there and make the case for, you know, what we see. And Alberta is a different province than a lot of them. You know, our province is developed way up north, whereas you could have forest fires burning in northern Ontario, and if the wind wasn't putting it towards Toronto, nobody would notice. They wouldn't even know. So we are having, I think, a better discussion with them. Hopefully we can get along, but at the federal and provincial levels. And yeah, so I'm hopeful. And again, part of that advocacy trip, I don't want to get too far into it, but we went out to Ottawa again for a couple days and met with 6 ministers. So it was quite, and a lot of staff. So we had some really good conversations. But I think we're moving in the right direction.
Anything else, Councillor Burrows? Okay, getting my report here. Kind of go backwards. Last night I had a meeting with the Woodlands County Library Board up in Fort Assiniboine. They're talking, I guess they're looking at their budgets and kind of where they've been over the year, and thankful their provincial grants that come in, plus the extra funds that we put towards for programming for both libraries and the communities has come in, and they're going over just a bunch of highlights with their programmer who is there giving us an update on a bunch of like paint nights and craft nights and some of the things they have going on. And they're finding that the participants from the public are actually higher than what they're anticipating when a lot of these events come on, or the programs they're putting, which is great to see. It's money that we're putting in through our, I guess, FCS needs report for the communities, and it's been very well received is kind of where we're at. We do have a couple book sales coming up where they move out old stock, so we should be watching for those. That'll be happening. Had the Indigenous Pathways meeting that wasn't a meeting yesterday apparently, but Councillor Dean, and again to our discussion there earlier, he had found an organization that does work with municipalities and other groups as a nonprofit to try and find plots of land or areas where they can plant trees and like medicinal plants and kind of more Indigenous centric foliage. And the discussion we had is, you know, we're kind of, I guess, oversee some of that happens out of Eustis with industry, and that Eustis Demonstration Park would be a great area for that if we move forward and we do something, and it's obviously approved by everybody involved in that area. But just especially with school groups and anybody coming through, they're just having that extra educational piece, and you know, in an area that is preserved, and we won't have to worry about people coming through and, you know, having it be part of somebody's FMA and being logged out later. Went through the ASB meeting. One thing, I know we don't mention at any of our council meetings where even updates on the ASB, is Dawn and her list that she gives us of what she does in between our meetings. She is an incredibly busy individual. She deserves a kudos for that. She very driven on the ag service end and what she does, and it's incredibly appreciated to have her in that position. I know she keeps mentioning that she's looking at retirement at some point, but I'm sure we can keep her there for another, 10, 12 years, hopefully. We'll see, but. Last week, I had a meeting with the Chamber of Commerce in Whitecourt and MLA Long, talking about just crime within the area, whether it be the town of Whitecourt or rurally within the county, and just kind of see from a business sense what they're seeing from the chamber in Whitecourt and what we're seeing and how things kind of collaborate and where there's areas that we might be able to work together or, I guess, advocate for. And I know municipalities, whether it's the rural municipalities or Alberta munis, at every one of our conferences that we go to, spring, fall, year over year, keeps talking with the Minister of Justice there on what they got to do for reform. And I know it's federally driven, and I know it's something we're pushing for reform on the program to be less of a rotating door, and the province is pushing on it as well. So Martin Long did say that our Prime Minister mentioned, I don't have the news clip, but in the news that they are looking towards the end of this year at possibly updating or at least looking at that policy and how we handle repeat offenders. So hopefully something comes out of it. I know there's a lot of frustration shared, especially from the business community with the break-ins and what it costs them. To that though, when we were talking with the members there is, I'll say, with regards to calling or the numbers it calls for break-ins or people actually reaching out to the RCMP, they're finding that the break-in numbers on the businesses are going up, but the calls to the RCMP to report on the reporting side is going down. And again, they believe a lot of it shared frustration with you call, you make a claim, even if you have cameras, if they're not really good vision or you don't see somebody, don't have anything, it's essentially a report and there's not a whole lot that comes out of it. And I believe that's part of the shortfalls in the reporting we're seeing. But the RCMP, we're also asking that we make sure that, especially from the business side or personal side, that if something happens or we see something, to continue to make the reports, because it helps them on their end for collection data and for trying to get more support at the backside for the area. So aside from that, we did have our thankfully passed our land use at the last council meeting, and then in between there I had the Alberta Care Conference. I was kind of back and forth between here and Westlock for. One thing I kind of laughed at, we've had lots of discussion around our council, I know the town of Whitecourt's council also, in regards to our makeup of our landfill and having it say as an authority or moving to a commission. That was actually one of the topics that they had there. And one of the things they were talking about is if you're moving from an authority to a commission, it kind of relaxes some of that legal responsibility or on the municipalities. Yet when we had discussions with legal, they said it doesn't really change a lot. So not really sure. I mean, we were getting different communication both ways. There was a tour out to the, I think it's Nelson Jespenson. He's got a large robotic dairy farm up in the Westlock area. Yeah, so it was really, really neat to see that. And then out of Busby, there was another tour to the vertical Swiss lettuce grill they had there. So lots of innovation, lots of new things coming around from that. And finally, last thing I would like to say, obviously, before we get to October 1st for the candidates forum, is best of luck to everybody who's still running, who's either on council or looking to fill a position, and I look forward to being there and seeing how it goes. Any questions, comments, Councillor Coogan?
Just something I forgot, and I'm gonna put in a formal request. I was asked by one of the teachers at the Ford School. They have a science program, grade 5 and 6 science program, and he's trying to relate that to what happens with climate change and all of those things and what local government is doing about that. So I agreed they would like to come to the council chamber, so I agreed to entertain being on the hot seat for grade 5 and 6 kids for an hour or so. I believe it's on October 2nd. So if any of you guys would like to share that hot seat, I would really appreciate it. and if you don't, I'll understand it.
Alright, thank you. Councillor Dean,
Just a question, did you say that you visited a vertical?
it's out of Busby. Yeah, it's a vertical
lettuce?
lettuce operation.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so is it like a greenhouse thing? Is it 12 months a year or?
Yeah, 12 months a year. It's all artificial lighting, everything within a building. It's controlled climates and
Okay, thanks.
lots of, I don't know, kind of like a hydroponic setup. So you have everything just kind of constant flowing and
And then they just sell to local grocery stores?
they sell, I believe they also have or I haven't checked, but I think they have a website and you can actually pull off their website and they do a lot of farmers markets and local markets and stuff to move the product. But it is, and we've talked about this with the Ag Service, it is a way that there's multiple vertical grow operations coming up from any of your leaf green, like lettuces, different types of spinaches, they're doing strawberries, potatoes, you know, kind of like the stacked in a lot of like, again, controlled environment buildings where it's a smaller footprint, but the yield is continuous throughout the year instead of what you see with your traditional agriculture, which has a kind of shorter window for growth.
Yeah.
So,
Cool, thanks.
Councillor Coogan?
Yeah, it's great that you bring that up because, you know, I'm glad to see that that's starting to become more local and there's, and people like you go and visit those things because I think that has huge potential here. I know that I went over to visit an operation that's in St. Paul and they're not just producing in a small way anymore.
Yeah.
It's a huge operation and they do supply to the local produce market because the demand is there.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, they even have, and not so much here, but they have some companies that make like Secan style grow centers and they ship them to a lot of the more northern communities. And that way they have, again, places where it's really hard to grow anything outdoors, you have full coverage year round. Councillor Burrows?
Yeah, sorry, there was one other thing that I kind of forgot, and I'll clarify the Bill 5 question, the C5 question. What they're looking for right now is kind of input on how they can build some of these things. But I think an important thing was one of the kind of perceptions that they had was that Alberta's oil and gas and BC's forestry. And I was, no, we've got a ton of forestry in Alberta too, but they don't think that. And there are opportunities to actually get them in to have a look around Alberta because if you haven't left the east, we've gotten some bad press out there and there's a perception in their head that we are not all that environmentally friendly, which couldn't be further from the truth. But I just wanted to touch on that because our forestry has been, I don't know, it's been so steady, and I think it's challenged right now with a lot of those regulations with the species at risk and all of these threats to their fiber, what do you call it, access to fiber, yeah. So anyway, that's, I just found that was an interesting concept from them that they didn't understand that we had a very healthy forestry industry as well.
To that point, if you're sitting in the room and they're talking about forestry within Alberta versus BC, there are a lot of, even some of our local operators in the area here who, you know, they're large companies, large corporations that have actually pulled out of BC.
Mm-hmm.
So yes, forestry is big in British Columbia, but some of the red tape and restrictions there is actually driving that industry out.
Mm-hmm. And we were able to talk about, you know, specifically some of the environmental red tape that they're seeing right now in you know, burning waste wood and for power.
Yeah.
And then if you restrict that, it just drives the cost up on the other end, so.
Yep. Right. With that, if I can get a motion to move council reports for information. Councillor Wilhelm?
I'll make a motion to move the council reports as information.
Thank you, councillor. Call the question, all in favor? Take one more here, councillor correspondence, anything anybody sees there, discussion? Not, if I can get a motion to move correspondence items for information. Councillor Dean?
Move that council receive the council correspondence for information.
Thank you, councillor. Call the question, all in favor? It's good. We want to take a 10-minute break. We'll come back at quarter after and we'll continue with the last few items here. You just let us know when we're off. Okay, and we are back. 11A.1 Woodlands County employees as county firefighters remuneration.
Thank you, Reeve. Just for clarity, because this does talk about staff, referencing names or even asking the number of staff that we have that are both employees or firefighters, I would request council refrain from that. If you want to go into those specific details, we're more than able to go in closed session and have those discussions. I will keep it brief in the sense that we have no more than a handful of employees that are also firefighters. And being such, depending on how you ask your questions or your inquiries, that could unintentionally identify those staff and privacy and FOIP point of view. I just ask that you be cognizant of that when it comes to your questions.
I believe we can keep it high levels.
Perfect. So we had an inquiry from council, a counselor, just asking about a current practice about concerns of potentially double billing when it came to fire calls. And we investigated and it looked like it has been a long-standing practice due to gray areas in our current fire SOGs, where if an employee is a volunteer firefighter, they would, in theory, be eligible to not only collect the $23 an hour for firefighting, but also their hourly county wage, if the call occurred during work hours. Now, without making too many assumptions as to how that SOG was put in place back in the day, I think my assumption would be that we want to encourage our staff to be firefighters because we are on a volunteer program, and having staff that work locally that are also willing to help our ratepayers in their time of need is definitely a good thing. But it was clear in this discussion with the counselor that they were unaware that this practice of the double billing had occurred. So two things. And we've heard it a couple times from council, and that's a disservice that we've probably provided you historically, where you're not aware or haven't been properly informed of a policy or procedure that's going underway until you're surprised with it. So on behalf of administration, if you weren't aware of this policy, that is entirely our fault, and my apologies on it. Ultimately, we've allowed this to occur during our current practices and historically. I would say that financially, to date, it has been a minimal cost to the organization. So I wouldn't say it was a significantly noticeable sum, and that could be also why it hasn't been brought to council's attention before. We also did some comparisons. We talked to the town of Barrhead, we talked to the town of Whitecourt, as well as Lac-Saint-Anne County. And the municipalities where they do have staff as employees, they get their reflective hourly rate, and not the 23 or not their set volunteer fire rate, if the call occurs during scheduled work hours. So ultimately, if that is a thing that council wishes to change, we can absolutely bring the policies back and amend them. The draft recommended motion there is that you do that. If our comparable municipalities or other volunteer fire departments aren't compensating their staff in that same way, I think we should be held to a similar standard. That said, we always need firefighters. And the fact that we have a handful of firefighters that are county employees, this may or may not stop them from volunteering. And that's a balance of whether we change the SOGs or whether we keep them the same or find some middle ground. This is more intended as an information item to make sure you're aware, but if you wish to recommend it so that employees during their workday that go on a call just get their hourly rate as an employee, we will have to amend those policies, and we just need some direction accordingly.
Okay, Councilor Coogan?
Yeah, you know, I'm the culprit that brought this up, and part of it is, or the biggest part of it is that I don't really want to have a question in any place, whether it comes from ratepayer or whether it comes from employees, of whether it's right or wrong or whatever. If the policy states what the policy states, then administration can react to that. There is a piece missing in this as well, and that is that when the fire service bills another entity for a service provided, there's an administrative piece that goes with it, and this is very personal to me. That administrative piece is usually done by somebody in the fire department, and they don't necessarily have to be on a call to bill that to the administrative piece. And there was a huge case that happened there, and it was devastating for a 30-year employee. And I'm sorry, that should have never happened, and it's because it wasn't in the SOGs, and it had been said multiple times before, and before this administration, it had been sent in front of the previous administration to deal with that open-endedness, because this person became vulnerable to saying, well, you weren't on that call, so why are you getting paid for that? Because they were doing the administrative. The current person that's working in that administrative capacity is vulnerable to that as well. And I think that should be included in this policy. And I'm not sure how you would do it, but I think it bodes well for a discussion. I think we need to protect all of our volunteer firefighters from any of those innuendos, whether they come from the public or whether they come from within.
Councilor Dean?
Thanks, Mr. Chair. So can you just help me understand, in the case of a fire that starts during office hours and somebody's pulled away, so then that particular individual would be paid their county salary or their county hourly wage. If a fire started in the middle of the night and it carried into business hours, how is that then treated?
So if I may, through the chair, my understanding based on the review that we've taken both through the fire department and through finance is that the scheduled work hours are topped up. So for sake of discussion, let's say it's $35 an hour for during office hours. So if there was a part of the service that went into that scheduled workday, they would be getting that $35 an hour plus the $23 an hour fire fee. So if it was a scheduled part of your scheduled workday, you would be getting the two pays, the 23 and your hourly rate, in this case 35 is the example.
That's the current practice.
That's the current practice.
And you're suggesting,
So I'm suggesting, is that if you are working during the day and your hourly rate is $35 an hour and you get called up for a fire, you'd be being paid $35 an hour on that fire call. If it went after your working hours of 3:30 or 4:30, then you're going down to the $23 an hour.
and conversely, if the fire started at 6 o'clock in the morning?
Exactly, yes.
Okay.
Any other discussion on this? Seeing what does council wanna do? Councilor Coogan?
Yeah, I feel that the recommendation is clearing up that issue of somebody saying that somebody is double dipping. And either way, it clears up the issue, whether you're paying them double or whether you're paying them for the hourly rate that they're in. And I do think that it will make a lot more sense the way that it's been presented, that that when you're working under the fire service and offer regular hours, you work under the fire service. And if you're working under the fire service with your regular hours, you get paid your regular hours. You don't lose that. You don't lose anything. You don't go down because you're stepping away. I think that's a great compromise.
And we'll say not municipality, but outside other industry or other jobs, anybody who volunteers as a fire department or fighter, typically if they leave their job to do the fire call, they're not getting paid at their job that they left, they get paid for the fire call. Councilor Burrows?
Yeah, it's an issue, so, sorry, thank you through the chair, it's an issue, and I mean, this is happening right everywhere, that we are having trouble getting volunteer firefighters, and you're moving closer and closer to a paid fire service, so longer we can stave this off as an expense, I think the better off we'll be, but I'll go ahead and make the motion that council direct administration to amend policy 2301, volunteer firefighting with staff, to clarify that firefighter remuneration under SOG 11.2.1.5 does not apply during a regular working hour, and that during such hours employees shall receive their county staff salary, sorry.
Okay, motion on the floor, discussion on the motion? Not seeing any. Call the question, all in favor? Opposed? Okay, and that's carried. Councilor Gookin?
I would entertain a second motion to direct administration to have a look at the way that the administrative portion of that is handled right now. And I do that just to protect the people that are doing it.
Okay, is that clear enough for you, Mr. Ferris? Yes. Any discussion on Councilor Gookin's motion? Call the question, all in favor? That's moved. Okay, coming into reports, 11C1 Carlson Drive Drainage Improvement Project Update.
Thank you, Your Worship and members of council. We took RFD to council on August 13th to talk about Carlson Drive Drainage Improvement Project, and the council gave us approval to proceed with a public engagement session. Staff has organized and conducted a public engagement session on August 28th at the Goose Lake Hall. 22 residents attended the session, and a total of 11 written questionnaire responses were received. For context, we did ask one family, one questionnaire, so 11 out of 22 is very representative to majority of the attendees. For context, there are 9 permanent residential dwellings and 21 seasonal residential dwellings within the project limit. And most of the attendees to the session are local residents on the Carlson Drive. The results of the questionnaire were tabulated in my RFD. We asked the question of the opinion of removing the walking trail because the trail is blocking drainage. 8 out of 11 said yes, 1 out of 11 conditional yes, 1 out of 11 oppose, and 1 out of 11 unclear. There's only one respondent says they use the trail regularly. On the question of their opinion on removing trees, because the trees are growing in the ditch and also preventing drainage. On that question of removing trees in county road right away, 7 out of 11 say yes, 3 out of 11 conditional yes, 1 oppose. On the preference of options presented, we presented 3 preliminary options per the previous RFD on August 13th. Option 1 is a minimal maintenance option. Option 2 is a limited reconstruction option, and option 3 is a full reconstruction option. So we asked the attendees on their preference of options. 1 out of 11 chose option 1, 6 for option 2, 2 out of 11 for option 3, and 2 out of 11 did not answer that question. We also provide opportunity for residents to provide written comments, and I have provided a summarized version of their written comments. I'll just quickly run through them. One resident wants more stormwater to be directed to lake. One resident identified algae growth is natural and common. Some residents want county to upgrade their approaches to 10 meters wide, while we excavate to replace or construct culverts. Some residents support stage construction planning. Some residents want action immediately. One resident identified lake water quality concerns. One resident identified vehicle speeding concerns. One resident identified the project limit may be too long and wanting the project limit to be reduced. On the next page of the RFD, I basically tabulated the three options that we provided in the August council meeting. So for context, option one, maintenance option, option two, the limited reconstruction option. This option is trying to limit our construction footprint within the the roadway right of way, so that we're not expanding the right of way onto other private properties. But we'll see majority of the trees and trail to be removed. Option three is a full reconstruction option, which will require the county right of way to be expanded to 30 meters and would require all trees and the entire trail to be removed at a much higher cost. So in looking at all the rationales, option one is likely a temporary solution and will need to be repeated on a regular schedule. The option doesn't really address the ponding and ditching issue that some residents have. Option three can only be completed by a contractor, which will require funding be allocated in a capital budget and will require additional right of way from residents. And a few residents told me that they it's not acceptable to them to sell any right of way. Option two is aimed at investing on the items with highest return, such as culverts, ditches, and trees, while accepting some other items such as the width of the right of way, not to current county standard. So to some further notes to provide is some of the working option one and two can be performed by internal forces to help reduce the cost. And some of the items in option one and two can also be phased so that we can deliver them over a number of years to reduce the annual capital load if we proceeding with any of those options. So just in thinking through of all the options and taking residents' comments and preferences, we are recommending option two be selected for proceeding to next steps of design process, which will include design, a phasing plan, the environmental permitting. For full disclosure, because the season is running out, I did ask the consultant to go out to start doing the field work on environmental, otherwise we'll be looking at another further delay in timing. Utility relocation and costing. Option two is also just trying to take the balance between cost benefit and the flexibility in phased approach. And with the phased approach, a reduced funding requirement, as I said, would be the end result. A phased approach may also allow the construction to proceed a little bit sooner because of the lower funding requirements. For information, the design timelines are largely dependent on the complexity of environmental permitting. We are talking about the named water body, very close to our road. And it's conceivable that we'd be applying to Alberta Environment under Water Act. We're probably going to need DFO, the Department of Fisheries Oceans authorization. So I don't want to overpromise on the timeline. It's something that we have limited control over when it comes to environmental permitting. And I certainly don't want to, I know some residents want action right away. It is something I have to be very careful is I don't want to expose the county to any liability when it comes to the environmental side of things. So the funding requirements can be developed once we have a design and a phase plan. The phase plan it's important. It's an important piece here because we need to incorporate the sensitivity, the environmental sensitivity into the equation. We also need to include how severe, the severity of the situation, the impact to landowners into all these equations. It's not something that I can develop without doing the design and understanding the permitting side of things first. So that's why I don't have anything more concrete to present to council. This is more asking council's approval to proceed, at least taking the option so we can proceed. So just going a little bit further into our thinking process, we do have a placeholder program on our capital project list that's called culvert replacement routine. And the intent for me to create this item last year during budget deliberation process is we have a TCA policy that's being reviewed, and we are proposing some to lower the limits, and the other reason is culvert installations and culvert replacements are generally a capital item, and it's a good financial strategy to capitalize them. And in the past, they're not being capitalized, and I think there's the opportunity. And having a capital item that's a placeholder that we have funding allocated every year, some of the money can be repurposed towards this project if there are culverts that need to be replaced and help with the funding. And and we can also have funding from operating program, try to combine them into a phased approach. That way, try to reduce the amount of new money that we have to come up with. So that's the thinking process behind that. We have spoken to the consultant to ask the consultant to start getting prepared with survey, because snow may be flying in a month. We need to get things going. Otherwise, we're just missing another opportunity here. As I mentioned to some residents during the public engagement session, in option 2, the idea is majority of the trees and trail will be removed. The reason I said to them the majority is there may be situations that some trees, some of the trail can be left behind, and if that's the case, it doesn't impact our drainage, it doesn't impact our roadway maintenance. There's benefit just leaving those trees and portions of the trail in place for people still to enjoy the remnant value of it. I just want to let council know that's the thinking process behind that. To also cover the topic of the lake water quality issue, I have reached out to 2 experts suggested by one of the residents who studies and surveys water quality in Alberta lakes. I also received a map from them showing the drainage basin of Goose Lake, and I can provide a summary to council is that the Goose Lake the drainage basin for Goose Lake is actually to the northwest of the lake, and our Carson Drive is situated on the southeast side of the lake. So our drainage impact to the lake is minimal. We're not even in the right path of drainage basin there. So I certainly any time we do projects by a lake that has nutrient issues, reducing the nutrient loading is definitely a good practice. However, nutrient loading reduction is also very expensive. So I have some literature reading to do as yet, but there seems to be some possible cost-effective options that we can perhaps incorporate into our design to try to reduce the nutrient loading. For example, constructed wetlands is very expensive. However, we may be able to construct a fan in our culvert outlets, and so that to slow down the water flow and allow vegetation to catch, and use that as a mini wetland. And that's one option one of the experts gave me as an idea. So I'll continue to do some research to further detail any of those ideas, and hopefully we can incorporate something to our project. I also want to provide to council that the lakes in Alberta are managed under the provincial mandate of environment and protected areas. Although it's not in our county's jurisdiction, it's, as I mentioned before, if there are small things that we can do, maybe we'll try to incorporate. Without reading word for word of my RFD, that's the body of my RFD, and I just want to say I'm not seeking additional funding at this time. This is more approval to proceed with a chosen option, so I can proceed with my planning activities. for information, there is already $100,000 allocated in the 2025 capital budget for the engineering fees that I need to utilize. We have drafted a webpage for this project that we're doing some testing. It's probably already accessible by public, but we're still doing some testing. But we can make it public shortly after the meeting today with the decision of council. And one last thing I want to say is the design will likely take more than just 2025. We're 3 months away from the end of the year, and environmental permitting definitely would take more than that. So just for some of the more advanced warning that some of the money may become carried over into next year, just for context. That's my RFD. I'm happy to take any questions you have.
Good job. Councilor Coogan.
Yeah, just through the chair, just a couple of things. First of all, I'd like to say, Jeff, is that I attended the engagement session there, and you guys did an incredibly good job. And you could see that just by the way that the kind of the angst in that group went down as you showed them the rationale. So that was a huge positive. It's part of the thing that we looked for the last 4 years, is to get our public engagement process refined and start to have people understand that we're actually there asking for their input based on how they're going to be affected. The second thing that you alluded to was that there was a conversation that started about the quality of water in the lake, and just because of the way that you approached it, I see now that the residents are starting to understand that there's been a neglect from Alberta Environment for a long time not to have a look at the way that lake operates. The water is relatively stagnant, so it isn't drainage that's causing the problem. It's more the stagnation because of the weir that's hit the back that hasn't been maintained, and that's an Alberta Environment issue. So the whole thing is actually brought the conversation into a place where now the community can advocate to make the lake better as well. So I see nothing but positive. I think that the questionnaire was great. I found that you were very good at resisting making any promises, which seemed to be everybody wanted you to promise them something. So, I really think that this is the process, and I really appreciate that you included me in the conversation.
Thank you. Any other discussion? Seeing any, which way do we want to go here, gentlemen? Councilor Coogan?
Yeah, I'll make the motion that administration, well, I guess not to draft the web page, but that we accept the Carlson Drive Drainage Project update as information.
Thank you, Councilor. Discussion on that motion? Not seeing any, I'll call the question. All in favor? That's moved. And then motion 2.
Yeah, I'll move the council direct administration to proceed with planning for the limited reconstruction option in 2025 and 26.
Thank you. Discussion to that motion? Not seeing any, I'll call the question. All in favor? It's moved. 11C2 2025 surplus items. Mr. Zhang?
Thank you, Your Worship, and members of council. Before you is the surplus list for 2025. This time around, there's only one item on the list. The reason being, we had a revamp of the policy. Policy FIAM 5002 was adopted this year, which gave me authority to surplus items of minimal value, as well as still protecting council that any of the heavy construction equipment will still have to come back to council for approval. And this is the reason why you only see one item. That doesn't mean that we only have one single item for surplus this year. The item that we have for surplus this year is grader number 151. It's a CAT 140M grader. It's 2015 grader that has over 13,000 hours for for context, our vehicle replacement policy from 2023 suggested that the target disposal limit is around 7,500 hours to get an optimal value for surplus items. This grader is no longer viable as an asset to keep, just because the estimated resale value and the maintenance, the expected maintenance cost on the unit the ratio is too high for us to spend the amount of money to repair and keep it operational. We'd be better off just to sell it. It's after the surplus, if council approved the surplus, the county would remain with 4 newer graders and 4 older graders that we still need to use to operate. The item will be sold as is. The item will follow the policy, the process of surplus will follow the policy. We will attempt to surplus on government asset disposition sites before using private auctioneers, trying to get the best value out of it. And any funds received will go back to the reserve in accordance to the policy that council passed early this year. That's my RFD, thank you.
Councillor Dean.
Just prepared to move that council approves the 2025 surplus list as presented.
Thank you, Councillor. Discussion to the motion? Not seeing any. Call the question, all in favor? That's moved. And that, Councillor Wilhelm?
I'll make a motion to go into closed session at 11:45 a.m. pursuant to Access to Information Act, section 19(1)(a)(2).
Thank you, Councillor. So that concludes our open session. With that, I will call the question and go into closed session. All in favor? Removed. And thank you, everybody, for coming. Just let us know when we're stop the stream.